Turk, Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. All right, big show ahead as always, but elections all week. So Rhode Island's tonight, Matt Brown and the Rugenberger for the lieutenant governor race in tonight, and then Cynthia Nixon's tomorrow night in New York against Andrew Cuomo. That's going to be a heavyweight fight. So on today's show, lots of fascinating news. There's a new PAC formed. Now, those PACs normally there's a little questionable, but sometimes you get a PAC like Wolf PAC and not so bad. This one is a little bit like that. It is unique.
It is unique.
I hadn't thought of it, and when I read into it, I was like, wait a minute, that's a really good idea.
You're hyper today.
No, but Great. It's true. But it's true, guys. You guys are gonna see it. And by the way, started by a Justice Democrat.
What?
That's already in Congress. Oh, yeah. And then the Trump Tower meeting. What are they doing? Are they scrubbing that money a little bit?
It looks like it.
Okay, look like a little bit of money laundering. Hey, over here, then they go to the Virgin Islands, and then all of a sudden they get cleaned out and put that on the other side. We're gonna explain that whole chain for you guys a little bit later in the show. And where did the money wind up after the Trump Tower meetings? Rams. Okay, so that's a little bit later in the program. No one does a news show like this. No one. Casper, go.
All right, we begin with Hurricane Florence. Very relevant story. The Carolinas and Virginia very concerned about this upcoming hurricane, and they should be considering Trump's priorities. New documents reveal that the Trump administration decided to take millions of dollars out of FEMA funding and then redirect that money toward detaining individuals at the border. So to be specific, there was $10 million that was taken out of the FEMA budget, and it would come from FEMA's operations and support budget, and it was then transferred to accounts at ICE to pay for detention and removal operations. As we know, the Trump administration continues with their extremely strict immigration policies, and our preparedness for hurricanes might suffer as a result of that. The Department of Homeland Security transferred money from accounts at Customs and Border Protection that pays for border fencing and technology as well.
So let's pause there, because they brought it to ICE, and then they brought it for, as you just saw there, CBP, okay? So border fencing and technology, there's another word for that, it's called the wall. Now, it's a little bit different, and if you remember during the election, Hillary Clinton was also for a fence. And so, and at different times, Trump has said, oh, dude, the wall, it's gonna be good, it's gonna be see-through, maybe like a fence. So, okay, that's what I thought. Anyway, but in a sense, it is for whatever you want to call it, a fence or a wall at the border. You know where we could really use a wall? In North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia today. But it ain't gonna keep out the hurricane either, okay? So they're taking your money against a mythical enemy.
Right.
And using it against a mythical enemy, when in fact, there are real huge problems that could wipe out your home, your where your family lived. And if you don't move fast enough, your family itself barreling towards us, and they take that real problem and call it a hoax.
Yeah.
And they take a hoax and call it the real problem. Now, if it was just demagoguery and it was just used to win elections, it would be bad enough, because that has consequences as well. But now it's actually money. They're moving money out of the right places and into the wrong places. Trump said, and we talked about this last night on the election coverage on the Young Turks Live, that he alone could protect you. Well, it turns out he's doing the exact opposite. Just in order to play political games, he's not protecting your family, and instead transferring money to things that are going to do almost nothing to protect you.
Right, and also, as with any political issue, any policy, you have to take it in the context of other policies to kind of understand the weight of what's going on. Because this isn't just an isolated story where money's being redirected from FEMA and put into detention efforts at the border. You have to think about what Trump has been doing when it comes to environmental policy, which would exacerbate the issue of climate change and further further lead to more extreme weather conditions, more extreme hurricane seasons. Then you have to keep in mind that the Trump administration pushed for and successfully passed massive tax cuts for the wealthy, which will lead to less revenue for the federal government. Those tax cuts are going to cost nearly $2 trillion over the next 10 years. And so all of this stuff is an incredibly dangerous cocktail. And we've already seen the ramifications of that when it comes to Puerto Rico. But with more extreme weather conditions, it's only gonna get worse. So by the way, it's not just FEMA. According to these documents, $200 million was moved from the budgets of other agencies to ICE's detention and removals. So we know about this because Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon was able to get these documents, and he had an interview on the Rachel Maddow show about it. So I want to toss to this video so you kind of get a sense of how serious this is.
$10 million comes out of FEMA when we're facing a hurricane season, knowing what happened last year, and then look what we've had since. A hurricane just barely missed Hawaii, a tropical storm that almost became a hurricane hit Mississippi, and now we have this hurricane Florence bearing down on the Carolinas. I find it extraordinary. And by the way, Rachel, the chart you put up is the same chart I have in my hand right here. It says that money came from response and recovery, right on it. So I would dispute the statement that this has no bearing on addressing the challenges from hurricanes.
So I want to also just quickly give you that statement that Senator Merkley referenced at the end of that quote. He said the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, released a statement on Twitter, and it goes as follows: under no circumstances was any disaster relief funding transferred from FEMA to immigration enforcement efforts. This is a sorry attempt to push a false agenda at a time when the administration is focused on assisting millions on the East Coast facing a catastrophic disaster. That is a flat out lie. The documents 100% indicate that the $10 million, nearly $10 million, was taken out of the FEMA budget, specifically the FEMA's operations and support budget, and then redirected to these immigration efforts.
In fact, instantly after putting out that lie, the agency, according to the New York Times, in an email said that funds taken from FEMA's accounts amounted to less than 1% of the agency's operational accounts. Okay, so you did take it out of the operational accounts. So when you said you didn't take it out of there, that was nothing but a lie. And does this administration have any credibility left at all?
No.
And do they think through any of their lies before they say them? So lie number one is, oh, no such thing, it's outrageous, how could they possibly say that? Lie number two is, it's just a small thing anyway. I mean, it was taken out of the operational account, so that first thing we said was total lie. An obvious, brazen, ridiculous lie, which we're now saying is, yeah, but we only took out a little bit. Okay, all right, now at least we're clear on who to believe and who not to believe. Merkley, by the way, if you don't know him, is one of the best progressives in the Senate, and this is exactly the type of thing that why we have separation of powers and why we need the three branches. So the legislative checks the executive and says, wait a minute, do you have the right priorities? And if Merkley releases that document and the whole country goes, oh yeah, that's great, man, that's wonderful. We really need to build that fence and to build more detention camps. That's what the country needs. Our family's being protected from hurricanes, who cares? The Trump administration did, according to himself, an unbelievably great job of protecting people in Puerto Rico, even though nearly 3,000 people died. If that's such a great job, if 3,000 people die in the Carolinas, will he also call that a success? An unsung success? Will he call? And if the country's comfortable with that, like, hey, 3,000 people dying in a hurricane, but at least we got detention camps, then you would say, oh, okay, I'm glad it was the legislative branch showed that, and we applaud it. If you don't like that, then I'm glad, we live in a democracy, then you should do something about it.
I do want to also touch on Trump's reaction to the nearly 3,000 deaths in Puerto Rico, and also FEMA's honesty in their report following some of these results in Puerto Rico. So first, as we had talked about yesterday, Trump believes that the disaster relief efforts in Puerto Rico were an unsung success. I'm sure he got heat for that because it was a ridiculous statement to say, but he decided to double down on it today. And he said via Twitter, "We got A+ for our recent hurricane work in Texas and Florida and did an unappreciated job, great job in Puerto Rico, even though an inaccessible island with very poor electricity and a totally incompetent mayor of San Juan." He's unbelievable. Nearly 3,000 people died. We are ready for the big one that is coming. So that's what Trump said. Now, what did FEMA say? Because they did release a report, after they analyzed the efforts there. And an after-action report by FEMA released in July shows that the agency vastly underestimated how much food and fresh water it would need and how hard it would be to get additional supplies to the island. The report also describes the initial response as chaotic and disorganized and plagued with logistical problems as the agency tried to get food and other equipment onto the island.
I feel like half my job now is breaking down the stupidity of Donald Trump and explaining all the things that are wrong with it. It turns out the island was inaccessible. As he has previously said, literally, it was surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. That's a quote. Okay, yeah, as the president, you're supposed to foresee that an island might be surrounded by water and that it might be hard to get to. And you're supposed to plan for that. Nobody could have known that an island was surrounded by water. We didn't know that it was big water in a hurricane.
And it was very wet.
And in fact, that's another quote from yesterday when he said that the hurricane is coming to the Carolinas and that it is going to be tremendously wet. Come on, guys, you're a Trump voter, you're still proud. You're still proud. You think that guy is smart. So a guy who says that water is tremendously wet. And a guy who says, well, I mean, an island was inaccessible. Everybody gave us A+, he said, for Texas and Florida. If Obama had said that, one, I'd be mortified, and two, I'd come out here and laugh and criticize him, etc. Why? I got an 8-year track record of doing that. When Obama did something wrong, we pointed it out. I mean, it's humiliating to have somebody on your own side be such a frickin' doofus. If Obama came out on anything he did, I got an A+ on that. You know what, another thing I did? Also an A+. Everything I do is an A+. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry I ever voted for him. What a buffoon. Who talks like that? What moron goes around saying, the things that I did, all the disasters that I handled, where thousands of people died, I got A+. I'd be like, oh my God, get me out of this room. You're proud of that? You're a Trump voter, you're proud of that? What an unbelievable idiot. You live in the Carolinas and Virginia. You really think that he prepared? Look, the fish rots from the head down. Scaramucci, his chief of staff for 13.5 seconds, said that quote. And he's the rotting fish at the head of this administration. They don't plan for anything. Their only plan is afterwards we'll lie about it and we'll cover it up. It'll be fine.
So already hundreds of thousands of people have evacuated to protect themselves from the hurricane that's coming. If you haven't evacuated, please do it. Please, don't take any chances, don't risk it, and don't rely on Trump's words because I don't trust him. I don't trust that he's prepared. He's completely oblivious, he's delusional, he's done a horrible job when it comes to Puerto Rico. He did a good job. FEMA did a great job when it came to Texas and Florida, but there's no guarantee that that will happen this time around, especially when you see how the funds have been diverted.
Yeah. One last thing, his criticism of the mayor of San Juan. So guys, if you live in the area that's gonna get hit by the hurricane, understand that his backup plan is he's just gonna call your local government officials incompetent and be done with it. He says, oh, well, the incompetent mayor who criticized me, how dare she, right? So he's gonna blame your mayor, he's gonna blame your governor. That's not his backup plan, actually, that's his plan A. Don't do homework because it's annoying and hard. What, people's lives are on the line? Yes. Bob Woodward warned, my God, what happens if we go into a crisis and he's the one that has to make decisions? I got news for you. This is a crisis. We've had a lot of crises. Certainly every giant hurricane that hits us over and over again is a crisis. And we have a president who doesn't like to do homework, doesn't like to prepare, is monumentally stupid. And so afterwards, his plan is, that's okay. I'll go say, your fault. Your fault. Yeah, you're stupid. Not me. I'm like a smart person. That's his plan. Yeah. Get out of there, man. Get out of there. And don't listen to anything Trump says.
Well, we have more news coming out of Puerto Rico, so let's get to that. More than 2,000 individuals, or 2,000 Puerto Ricans specifically, applied for funeral assistance after Hurricane Maria, and FEMA only approved 75 of them. Now, FEMA approved just 3% of applications for funeral assistance from more than 2,000 Puerto Rican families who lost loved ones after Hurricane Maria. So one of the things that FEMA does help with, does assist with, is if there is some sort of natural disaster and people have died as a result, FEMA funding can be used to help people pay for the funeral costs. However, there have been issues when it comes to the official death toll as a result of Hurricane Maria. Remember that those numbers were just recently updated. Now, FEMA had received 2,431 requests for funeral assistance from Puerto Ricans related to the hurricane. They approved just 75 of them, meaning that 97% have either been rejected or have not received a decision almost a year later. So Elizabeth Warren was the senator who pushed to get some more information about this. This is how we know about it. And when FEMA responded to her, they didn't give her the specific reasons for why all these other people were rejected, but the letter also indicated that to qualify, Puerto Ricans had to provide a death certificate or letter from a government official that clearly indicates the death was attributed to the emergency or disaster, either directly or indirectly. But unfortunately, that information is incredibly difficult to get. In fact, according to BuzzFeed News, getting that information was impossible for many families because the Puerto Rican government recently admitted that officials were not counting hurricane-related deaths correctly.
But that's the same reason why I actually don't blame FEMA or the Trump administration that much on this one, because I blame them for not responding quickly enough and getting those people help. That's what led to the deaths in the first place. And that's, the overwhelming majority of the problem. But in the case of the funerals, you do need a death certificate that says it was connected to the storm. And at the time, they had not connected those deaths to the storm. They just did recently. So I tend to think they were following their rules. So I'm not that outraged by this story.
Yeah, so I am outraged, but I agree with you that it's not, look, it's not FEMA's responsibility to issue the death certificates, right? It's the local officials, the politicians in Puerto Rico. But the way, there was wrongdoing on the Puerto Rican side as well, and I'm specifically talking about some of the politicians, right? The fact that we couldn't get updated, accurate numbers regarding the death toll was ridiculous. I mean, it was what, 65 people or something around there in the 60s? And it wasn't until a couple weeks ago where researchers went in, I believe it was researchers with George Washington University, and they were able to find a more accurate count, although even that number is a bit of an underestimate based on other estimates that were done. But nonetheless, let's say we take that at face value, nearly 3,000 people died as a result of the hurricane. We now have an update, and it's on those politicians to do the right thing and ensure that these people get the right death certificate, and FEMA issue the money that these people deserve so they can bury their loved ones. A lot of people were, they've already been buried, to be fair. A lot of people were cremated. Even though family members didn't want to cremate, they felt like they had no choice because that was the cheaper option. So, look, not every story has to be about blame, but we can fix things once we've got information in. So now that they know that those deaths were related to the hurricane, they should just simply pay for those funerals in hindsight, because that's the rules that apply to everybody. It applies to people in Texas, Florida, and in Puerto Rico as well. So I think it should be a relatively easy fix. If they resist the fix, then you've got a problem, because that's fundamentally unfair. But I think we should give them an opportunity to do so. So with that said, that was yet another issue that came out of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And I just want to remind you guys of what Trump thinks about their efforts, okay? Let's go to video 3.
What lesson do we take from what happened in Puerto Rico? How do we apply the lessons we took from Puerto Rico?
Well, I think Puerto Rico was incredibly successful. Puerto Rico was actually our toughest one of all because it's an island. I actually think it was one of the best jobs that's ever been done with respect to what this is all about. And the problem with Puerto Rico is their electric grid and their electric generating plant was dead before the storms ever hit. It was in very bad shape. It was in bankruptcy, had no money.
the job that FEMA and law enforcement and everybody did working along with the governor in Puerto Rico, I think was tremendous. I think that Puerto Rico was an incredible unsung success. Texas, we have been given A-pluses for. Florida, we've been given A-pluses for. I think in a certain way, the best job we did was Puerto Rico, but nobody would understand that. We've gotten a lot of receptivity, a lot of thanks for the job we've done in Puerto Rico.
No, we have a clown in office. Wow. Look, as I just told you, not everything is Trump's fault, is government's fault, et cetera, and you got to judge it based on the facts of the situation. So I'm not blaming him for the funerals at this point, but who trusts that guy to run the White House, to run the country?
Right.
He said that Puerto Rico, where nearly 3,000 people died, worse than Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, was, quote, one of the best jobs ever done.
Yeah, but look, the reason why I brought that video back is because the question from the reporter was, what lessons can be learned, right? And his answer is no lessons. It was perfect. So as more and more of these stories come out about the aftermath in Puerto Rico, I mean, just be a human for once and just acknowledge that mistakes were made and we're gonna do better next time and we're gonna do what we can to rectify the situation. But he doesn't have that in him. As we talked about yesterday, he's a sociopath, lacks empathy, doesn't understand, the pain and suffering of others, doesn't want to take a leadership position and right the wrongs that occurred in this case.
Yeah, and what did I tell you? I said that he would blame you afterwards. We were talking about it earlier in the show. If something goes wrong when the storm hits the East Coast today, his plan is to just simply blame you, just like he did right there. He said, oh, well, they had problems in Puerto Rico already. It's not our fault, it's their fault. Well, it's your job to go out there and help them and not shoot baskets with paper towels. Later, when asked about this insensitive way of dealing with victims of the hurricane, he said there were, what was it? Something like beautiful towels, soft towels.
They were the softest.
They were the normal paper towels in plastic. I don't know. He's such a fool. Anyone who can't see that he's a fool, I pity you. Apparently, you look at that and you think that's a smart person. Wow, God, that's so embarrassing. I can't help you. Good luck with your life.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Brad Pitt had a charity that helped victims of Hurricane Katrina. But did he? We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. I'll read comments a little bit later in the show because I just want to use time to talk a little bit about something that a lot of you guys have asked about, and then we'll go on with the show. So we're doing a membership drive. I'll just quickly show you where we are now, tyt.com/join. I want to come back and talk about this a little bit later in a sec, and that's a good number, and we appreciate it. That's about 3,000 higher than when we started about a week ago, and you guys are amazing for doing that. Now, I wanted to make sure that you guys understood something that happened here at TYT. So, look, we built this network 16 years ago. It started as a radio show, and then we started doing online video in 2005, and we're actually the longest running show on the internet, which is kind of amazing. But it's not just the Young Turks. The network has a lot of shows, and we tried for a long time to also build an entertainment part of the network. So we had all these wonderful shows that we believed in and that I thought we could make it work. It proved to be a little bit too ambitious on my part, and so that's on me. And but I love those shows. So What the Flick was the second show we ever did, and the original hosts were me, Ben Mankiewicz, and Matt Atchity. And you see the very long time host there. Ben took it over with Matt, and then Christy Lemire joined, and then Alonso Duralde, and they did all the movie reviews there, Matt Atchity, Alonso, and you could follow them at those accounts, obviously. Christy, these are all great friends of mine and people that I really admire and respect.
And we did Game of Thrones reviews there. Anna, me, John, Ben, Matt, all those guys. We'll continue. We'll find a way to do a Game of Thrones. They did so many TV reviews. Anyway, it's obvious that we put our heart and soul into those shows, but recently we had to retire them. There's a couple of reasons why, and the primary one is we've decided to focus our resources on homo progressives and on progressive politics. Now that's the heart and soul of what we do, and you know that, and then that's a lot of the reason why I hope you watch the Young Turks. And I wish we could have made those shows work, but we had to go in this direction and make sure we're focusing on the core mission as 2018 and 2020 are coming. And we've now got wonderful new political shows too. And some are on our podcast network, and obviously members get all of those. But so I want to tell you that the shows that basically, you can call it anything you like, but we're saying we retired are Pop Trigger, What the Flick, Think Tank, which used to be TYT University, which Anna started back in the day. Anna and John used to do that, and Nerd Alert. So I just want to thank some more people from those shows. So you have Grace Baldridge, who is on Pop Trigger. And by the way, some of these folks were on many of our other shows, including the Young Turks, and will continue to be. So, I can't wait to work with them again in the future and throughout. But Grace was mainly on Pop Trigger, so was Jason Carter, and also on the Young Turks from time to time. Darren Dean. I heard she just got into nursing school. She's continuing her modeling and acting career, but great to have Darren with us. And again, Matt Atchity, Christy Lemire, Alonso Duralde, that I told you guys about. And I also want to do a special shout out to Amir Nakui, who was the executive producer of both Pop Trigger and What the Flick. And you saw him on air from time to time, and including on Pop Trigger and Murder with Friends. It's another great show by Grace Baldridge, and Amir helped to put all those together. So I want to thank him. I also want to thank Hannah Cranston, who did such great work on Think Tank, and you saw Hannah a lot on the Young Turks as well. And of course, Kim Horcher from Nerd Alert on the show recently, obviously, and then built Nerd Alert, and we want to thank her for that. And they've got nothing but love here in the crew and in the building. And like I said, I hope we can work together with them again. And look, I just mentioned the hosts because you guys are more familiar with the hosts, but there was also wonderful editors, graphics, stage crew, production people involved in those shows, and I want to thank all of them as well, and appreciate their effort greatly. And so if you want to see some of the old episodes, and we've gotten a lot of requests for that, especially for for all the shows. That was a great picture that Kim put up. Murder with Friends, for example, etc. So go to tyt.com/archive, and you will be directed to those shows. And by the way, archives of the shows that are still on, and we've got over a dozen shows that are on that you get as part of membership, are also in the archives. So if you want to go back and listen to old schools, or watch old schools, or aggressive progressives, they're also in the archives. So please take advantage of that. And look, just two more things real quick. One is that I just want to explain why and how this stuff happens. Look, sometimes there's just normal changes in the course of a network. And so, for example, we changed TYT University into Think Tank. And some people didn't like that because they loved the show that Anna and John used to do when it was called TYT University. But these are normal changes that come along. They're small changes. And then there are big changes like this one when you decide to go in a certain direction for reasons that have to do with where you're taking the network. And so if you ask me, will there be other changes in the future? Will there be smaller changes? Of course there will. We'll adjust and we'll add programming. Sometimes we'll retire some shows. We used to do shows for the members called All-Star Tuesdays. You guys didn't love it, so we stopped, okay? There's other shows that you loved. Now, these shows, the entertainment shows, were, I think, had great fan base and were beloved here and in the audience. So that wasn't the case in that situation, but sometimes those happen. So do we want any more big changes? No, we don't. And that's obviously part of the reason why we're doing the membership drive. So what I'm telling you and what I'm promising you is if we get to 100,000 subscribers, then we are a rock. Then everything after that is additional. Hey, then we can add more shows. We can experiment. We can add a podcast. We can add a video show. We can do all these things and make sure that we build home and progressives. But we got to get there so that we have that progressive rock for you guys that no one can take away under any circumstance. That's why we tell you to go to tyt.com/join. We hope that you do. We hope that you become an activist member. That's $10 instead of $4.99. You get extra town halls. You get the swag bag, etc., and you get to be first at all the TYT events. And then finally, I wanted to let you know that I am doing a town hall where I'll be taking more questions, and I think we're arguably the most open and honest show in America, and so especially for our members, and that's the town halls are just for our members. Monday, September 17th at 7 o'clock Pacific, I'll take your guys' questions in that town hall. tyt.com/join to become a member and be part of that town hall. Thank you guys. Thank you for all the people who watch those shows. And by the way, one last thing on the YouTube and Facebook channels, we're doing one last video for them. The one for Pop Trigger is already up. It's pretty moving. Brett did that as an homage to everyone who worked on Pop Trigger. Also, don't forget the original hosts, Sam Shocker and Bree Estrig, who were wonderful, who are now doing other things and moved on earlier. But they helped to build that as well. So each of those channels will get one final video, and I hope you guys check that out as well. All right, thank you guys. Okay, now let's go on with the rest of the show.
All right. Following Hurricane Katrina, Brad Pitt wanted to do something to help residents who had been displaced, whose homes had been destroyed as a result of the hurricane. And so he created a new charitable organization that would build new homes and offer to sell them to people who had lost their homes in certain parts of New Orleans. Now, unfortunately, that charitable foundation has been dissolved, and some of those homes, actually all of the homes, are dealing with severe issues because they weren't designed to deal with the humidity and the rainy weather in the area. As a result, mold ended up being a huge problem. Now, Make It Right's mission was to build 150 well-designed green, affordable homes in the lower 9th Ward, the area that was actually hardest hit by Katrina. But as of 2016, the group reported spending $26.8 million building 109 homes. Okay. But the organization, according to NBC's reporting, has been dissolved. And we know that because some of the homeowners who spent $130,000 to buy some of these homes are not getting any responses when they need help with repairs. Now, I want you to watch a little part of the NBC report on this, and I'll fill in some blanks. We'll have a discussion. Take a look.
I think of a father who once had a home here and raising my kids here, and if I lost and had no way to return, how that would make me feel.
But the project that initially had planned to build 150 homes, selling for roughly $130,000 each, built only 109.
Look at my welcome mat. Oh.
And today, homeowners like Kamaria Allen,
there's a big water leak right here,
say many of the homes that were built are falling apart.
This has been years of ongoing lies and broken promises. We were promised green, healthy, energy-efficient homes, and we have everything but those things.
Allen bought her home in 2011.
I put that key in the door the first time, and I did a happy dance for like 5 minutes.
But then she says the problem started. Rusty power sockets, mushrooms growing from the home siding. She sold the house back to Make It Right as part of a settlement in 2013. NBC News spoke to 11 other residents, 10 on the record, who said that many of the Make It Right homes are rotting and dangerous, and their calls to the organization go unreturned. Some say repairs are only done if residents agree to sign non-disclosure agreements.
At one point, I felt optimistic that Make It Right was going to make it right. But at this point, I feel like they have abandoned not only my family, but my community.
So there's two elements to this story from my perspective. The second one's going to be controversial. But the first one was when I first saw the report and it said Brad Pitt sued for a charity where he was trying to help build homes in New Orleans. I was like, Jesus Christ, what are you guys doing, man? He's trying to help and now you're going to sue him. Then you read into the story and you watch the story and you go, Oh no, they bought the homes.
They bought the homes for $130,000.
Yeah.
And I really want to emphasize that because it's not as if they gave people homes, which, I don't really know where the charity comes in because this is a long time ago and this is not this isn't the Los Angeles Hills where if you get a home for $130,000, it's a bargain, it's a steal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I do. But look, I think that it's certainly started with good intentions is my understanding of it based on what I've read about it. And I think some of the residents were excited because it was rebuilding the area. They don't often get investment in this middle class to working class neighborhood. And it seemed like they were excited about the prices. So I think the charity part comes in at a pretty nice house in that area for a decent price. But it's a little bit of a charity, but you still have to buy the house and it's still a big chunk of money. So when you spend $130,000 on anything, you're gonna want it to work. And it seems, look, facts matter. Every story, we have perspective on the show, but what we really, really hope is that it doesn't color our look at the story and look at the facts. So as you look at the facts here, well, they didn't deliver what they said they were gonna deliver, and so that becomes a huge problem. And then it looks like they began to disband the operation. Obviously, they didn't build all 150 homes, but much more importantly is that they refused to take the calls going forward. Well, then you really don't have any recourse. And then the last part of it that really won me over was, apparently the residents didn't go after them for a long time because they thought, well, look, Brad Pitt's trying to help us here and we think he's genuine and I still think he's genuine about it. So do we want to make a big deal out of this thing? It's going to get him in trouble when he was trying to help. So, I mean, they did everything right in that sense based on the reporting from NBC. And at the end, they had to kind of throw up their hands and go, I'm sorry, man, this house has got mold all over it. It doesn't function.
Yeah.
I got to get my money back.
So, and also, first of all, the design flaw that didn't take into account that this is an area that gets a lot of rain, a lot of humidity. Like, just think a little bit ahead before you build some of these homes. But nonetheless, it was a mistake. Mold remediation, and I know from personal experience, is super expensive, right? It's a lengthy process. It's hard, it's expensive, it's difficult to go through. And so it ends up being more of a burden than something that actually helps them. And if you don't get that situation solved quickly, the mold continues to grow, you have black mold, you have health issues, right? You have respiratory issues as a result of living under those conditions. Some people complained, went to the doctor, have medical records indicating that they've suffered the health consequences of living in those conditions. But the point that I wanted to make about this story is a broader point. Whenever it comes to cuts in entitlement spending, or when it comes to cuts in social safety, government social safety net programs, the argument that the right wing will make, the Christian right wing specifically will make, is we don't need the government to help anyone because we'll have charities and we'll have people out there who will help their fellow Americans out of the kindness of their hearts, right? Out of the goodness of their hearts. And I don't want to rely on that system because I know this is just one example of a charity that has gone wrong, but this is one of many examples. And we need to have a stable system, a safety net program that does help our fellow Americans in their time of need. I think that's the most patriotic thing to do. And so just brushing it off and just saying, nah, charities will take care of it is not the way to go about it.
So, I remember one of the dumbest points I used to make when I was a Republican back in the day was that mold wasn't real.
You made that point recently when I was going through my mold remediation process.
Okay.
Yeah, don't pretend like that was when you were just a Republican.
No, when you were doing it recently, I was kidding. And even back when I was a Republican, I was a quarter kidding. But I thought it was I thought it was overhyped.
It's not.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Facts matter. Okay, it's overhyped based on what? You have to actually look into the facts, right? But anyway, I point that out as just a way of saying, look, we could all grow and we could all get to more logical conclusions. So if you were in the camp of like, oh, charity will take care of it all, and you see, well, no, sometimes charity doesn't take care of it all, and that it's not a systematic way of handling these issues that affect American citizens. There's a thing that's supposed to serve the citizens. It's called the government.
Right.
In a democracy, it's supposed to represent us and serve us. All right, now the last thing is the controversial point. Look, man, I love New Orleans. I love Miami and South Beach in particular. I am not convinced that those are great places to build.
Why is that controversial? I think you're 100% right.
No, people get really, really upset, especially from those cities. And
but it has nothing to do with your city. It has nothing to do with people there. It has everything to do with our current environmental conditions that will only get worse. It's based on facts, scientific facts. It's terrible and it's tragic, and I feel horrible for those communities. But we have a government. Currently, we have a government that's undoing any progress that we've had with environmental policy to combat climate change.
Yeah.
I would not build in those areas.
So look, you can get upset if you live in Minnesota and I tell you snowstorms are coming, but they're coming, and that's just a fact. And in New Orleans and South Beach, you are perilously in the line of danger, not just for hurricanes that hit all across the seaboard, but you're too close to the sea level and sometimes under it. And so those two cities in particular are in grave danger as climate change continues. So it's not hyperbole and it's not trying to scare people. It's a reality. The storms are getting more severe. They're getting more frequent. And if they hit Charleston, I don't know that I've picked a good example, but it might be able to survive. But how many storms can New Orleans survive? How many storms can South Beach survive? Mm-hmm. So it's not to blame the people who live there. And if you grew up there and you care deeply about it, I get it. I grew up in New Jersey and I love New Jersey. And I don't want it to go away. But we got to start being a little bit more realistic here, because continuing to build in areas that are clearly in a very significant path of danger is an issue.
Yeah. We need to take a break. But when we come back, there is a pharmaceutical executive that will make your head explode, okay? And it's not Martin Shkreli, it's someone else who might be worse.
Yeah, and their view of morality is really instructive. I mean, it's both enraging, but it really does give you a worldview into how other people think that is greatly disconcerting. All right, we'll be right back.